The sun filtered through the tall treetops, casting golden patches on the forest trail. Lily ran ahead, laughing and reaching out to a moth dancing in the air before her. It looked like a tiny piece of sunlight, light, radiant, elusive. Her feet barely touched the ground as she, captivated by the chase, drifted further from the campsite where her family remained. When the moth disappeared among the branches, the girl stopped, breathing heavily. She looked around. Only trees surrounded her, tall, silent, motionless. The path she had run along seemed to vanish, and the trees now looked identical, endless. The silence grew thick, enveloping. Lily took a step back, then another. Somewhere far away should have been her mother's voice, the crackle of a campfire, her brother's laughter, but there was none of that. Only the wind, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant, angry cry of a bird. "Mom," she called softly, but her voice was swallowed by the silence. Panic rose, tightening her throat. Lily knew she shouldn't wander far, knew her parents had told her to stay close. But now she was alone. The forest had become different, a vast, cold, alien. Suddenly, a soft rustle sounded ahead. The girl held her breath. From behind the bushes, a dog emerged smoothly. He was large and shaggy, with thick gray-brown fur and dark, intelligent eyes. His ears were alert, but he didn't move, just looked at her, as if studying her. Lily clenched her fists and stepped back, but the dog didn't take a step forward. He just stood and waited. Then, slowly and calmly, he turned and walked ahead, not looking back. Lily took a step after him. She didn't know why, but intuitively felt that this dog wasn't here by chance. He knew something. "Wait," she murmured, quickening her pace. The dog stopped, glanced at her, and moved on, unhurried, confident, as if he knew the way. The girl followed him, clinging to the only hope, this strange guide amid the forest shadows. The girl froze, looking around. The forest seemed alien and unfamiliar, the trees looming as dark silhouettes, and the wind whispered troubling stories in the leaves. She didn't know where to go. Panic rose in her chest, making her heart beat faster. The dog didn't move. He sat, watching her intently. In his large, deep eyes, there was no threat, only calmness and confidence. The girl hesitantly took a step forward but immediately stopped. Could she trust him? Who was he? Where did he come from? A sudden gust of wind brushed her shoulders, reminding her of the approaching dusk. The forest darkened quickly. She shivered and looked at the dog. He was still waiting, his gaze unwavering. It seemed he knew the way. Taking a deep breath, the girl cautiously followed the dog. He walked ahead, not straying too far. Sometimes he stopped, looked back, as if checking if she was following. His tail swayed gently from side to side, as if encouraging her. The forest gradually thickened, branches whipping against her clothes, the air filled with dampness. Suddenly, ahead appeared an old bridge over a narrow but swift stream. The wooden planks looked rickety, some rotted, and the railings barely held by nails. The water below churned, reflecting the last glimmers of the setting sun. The girl stopped. Her heart tightened with fear. Cross this bridge? What if it collapsed? What if the water pulled her into its cold depths? The dog approached the bridge first. He took a few confident steps, then stopped and turned his head, looking at her expectantly. He didn't rush her but left no room for doubt. She swallowed. Looked back. The forest seemed even darker and impassable. There was no way back. Only forward. Clenching her fists, the girl stepped onto the bridge. The planks creaked under her feet but held. Another step. Then another. The dog walked beside her, his eyes never leaving her. She didn't know why, but his presence was calming. When she reached the other side, her legs nearly gave way with relief. The girl took a deep breath and looked at her guide. He stood beside her, as if knowing the hardest part was over. But what lay ahead? Now she had no choice. She had to follow the dog further. The forest around her grew denser, like a thick, cold blanket. Sunlight no longer pierced the canopy, and the world turned dark blue and gray. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, the sound sudden and prolonged, making the girl shudder. She stopped, pressing her hands to her chest, trying to stay still and make no sound. But the forest's silence was frightening, filled with indistinct rustling, creaking branches, and some distant, muffled noise. The dog slowed his pace and, sensing her fear, came closer. His large, warm muzzle gently nudged her hand. The girl looked down and met his calm, confident gaze. It calmed her a little. The dog remained by her side, not rushing her, just standing there, letting her know she wasn't alone. Slowly, the girl took a step forward, then another. The dog moved ahead again, leading her through the darkening forest. Their steps on the soft ground sounded muffled. Sometimes a dry branch cracked underfoot, making the girl's heart skip a beat, but the dog didn't stop. He moved confidently, as if he knew the path. Soon, ahead, a fork in the road appeared. One path led deeper into the forest, narrow and overgrown. The other was wider, easier to walk, but something about it felt wrong. The girl stopped, looking at both paths. What now? The dog turned, looked at her intently, then firmly took the narrow path without looking back. The girl swallowed. Her heart raced. She was afraid of making a mistake, taking the wrong path, and getting completely lost. But if the dog wanted to leave her, he would have done so long ago. He had led her here and now showed her the way. She had to trust him. Taking a deep breath, the girl stepped onto the path and hurried after her guide. The forest's darkness closed behind her, hiding everything. The girl walked, struggling through the forest, until she felt everything around her becoming too dark and ominous. The wind tore at the tree branches, ripping leaves from their slender, fragile arms. The leaves rustled, whispering old, sorrowful stories. With each passing minute, the darkness deepened. Everything seemed to wrap around her, turning the world into a murky gloom where it was easy to get lost. She stopped, listening. Far in the forest, an owl's call sounded, as if the night itself began its hunting journey. The girl felt a chill on her skin and froze. A sense of unease rose in her chest, fear washed over her in waves, confusing her thoughts. The forest was quiet, but the world filled with rustling suddenly felt alien and dangerous. She took a few steps, but her legs felt like jelly. The forest, which had seemed so familiar during the day, now felt entirely different, sinister, cruel, and threatening. Just as she was about to succumb to panic, from behind a tree, his kind gaze appeared again. The dog. He was there. Without a word, he approached her, gently nudging her shoulder with his nose, as if pleading for her to calm down. In his eyes, there was no fear or doubt, only confidence and peace. He wasn't afraid of the storm. He was there, and that moment became the only thing that made her pause, calm down, and remember that she needed to keep moving. The dog turned and walked ahead, occasionally looking back to ensure she was following. She knew she couldn't stop, couldn't turn back, but as soon as she stepped into the next shadow between the trees, a loud roar of wind swept through the forest. It tore leaves from the trees, as if the forest itself was about to crumble. The wind's howls grew louder, and a storm seemed to rise from the ground. Branches cracked loudly. The girl squinted, trying to see through the chaotic noise, but the wind and rain rose, obscuring everything. She took a step, then another, each one seemingly harder to take. When she looked back, the dog was gone. He had been there, and suddenly he wasn't. The sudden silence was more frightening than anything. For a moment, it felt like the world had vanished, and fear clenched her chest again. She froze, her breath heavy, her heart pounding. She cursed herself for losing sight of him. How would she find her way now? How could she be without him? But before she could sink into panic, ahead in the darkness, she noticed a faint light. A lantern. The light, like a star in the night, beckoned her forward. It was familiar. It was the path, the trail she had walked before, leading home. She recognized that light. It was the way back to her parents. With each passing minute, her steps became more confident until she finally found the familiar place. The girl felt relief flood her chest. The anxiety was gone, replaced by joy at being back on the path home. She turned to thank her companion, the kind, faithful dog who had walked with her through the storm. But in the darkness, there was no one. No sign of his gray fur or ears turned to the wind. Only wet tracks on the grass that suddenly began to disappear. As she approached, they vanished within a few steps. The dog was gone, as if he had never been there. Tears filled her eyes, but deep inside, she felt something important had happened. She stood there, feeling the emptiness, and everything around her suddenly became still, like peace. But deep down, in a place no one could see, she understood he had been with her. The girl could barely stand, her body lashed by rain and wind, her eyes filled with tears. She walked home, and every cell in her exhausted body felt this return as a rescue. The storm that had raged around her finally subsided, but the traces of what she had endured in the past hours remained within her. Her heart still pounded with fear, and her mind couldn't calm down. But in her soul, there was one warm feeling, gratitude, for the path she had walked and for the one who had been by her side. The girl stopped at the threshold of her home, breathing heavily, and knocked on the door. Her parents, hearing the sound, rushed to open it. As soon as she entered, her mother hurried to her, embracing her, and whispered, "You're alive, you're back." But in the girl's eyes, there was not only fatigue and worry but something else, as if the world had become a little clearer. "I found my way home," she said, her voice trembling. "A dog led me. He was with me all this time and helped me return." Her parents paused. Her father looked at her intently, as if trying to understand what she was saying. Her mother wiped tears from her face and said, "What dog? Are you sure you weren't just tired, that you didn't see him in the dark, didn't imagine him?" "No, he was real. He was big and shaggy. He didn't bark, but he kept looking at me, making sure I followed him." The girl tried to find the right words to explain. But it was difficult. The experience was too strange to simply describe. Her mother and father exchanged glances. Her father seemed to remember something but said nothing. He stood up and went to an old cabinet where photos were kept. Opening the door, he took out a worn black and white picture and placed it before his daughter. "Is this him, really?" he asked. In the photograph was a huge dog with kind eyes. Shaggy, with a noble expression. The girl, looking at the photo, felt something tighten inside her. This is him," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her father silently nodded and shook his head. "That was our Baxter. He was with us for 7 years. He passed away exactly a year ago. He got sick." He fell silent, and the room was filled with a silence that seemed to freeze time for a moment. "But how?" the girl whispered, staring at the photo. "He was with me in the forest. He led me home, and I couldn't have returned without him." Her mother embraced her, trying to comfort her, but her eyes were filled with bewilderment. "Sometimes, dear, we can't explain such things. We lose those we love, but they remain in our hearts. Maybe Baxter was with you not in reality, but in your heart. But he was there when you were scared, and you felt his help." The girl sat silently, staring at the photograph, feeling the heaviness in her chest not disappearing but becoming a little lighter. He was gone, but he had been with her. That night, as the girl lay down to sleep, her thoughts couldn't rest. She kept replaying the moments in the forest when Baxter was by her side, when his gaze calmed her, when his tracks on the wet grass disappeared. It had all been so real that it couldn't have been just a dream. And then she saw him. In her dream, he stood before her, wagging his tail as he used to, happy and carefree, as if saying goodbye. He wasn't sad. He was joyful, as always. In his eyes, there was no pain, only peace and love. The girl woke up, and tears welled up in her eyes, but they were tears of gratitude. The next morning, when she went outside, something caught her attention. On the porch lay an old medallion, covered in a thin layer of dust. Picking it up, she saw the engraved name, Baxter. She couldn't believe her eyes. With a laugh through her tears, she whispered, "Thank you, Baxter." A prayer of gratitude for being with her, despite the distance and time. Baxter had been there, and now she knew that love was stronger than anything, even death. The girl couldn't calm down. Her parents' words still echoed in her mind. The dog that led her out of the forest was Baxter, their dog. How was that possible? Wasn't he the miracle she had encountered on her way home? With each word from her family, with each glance at the photograph, doubt grew within her. Wasn't it just a strange coincidence, a strange illusion, a result of fear and fatigue? But how to explain everything else? The dog that looked at her with such understanding, as if knowing she needed help. The dog that led her, not faltering, despite the storm and darkness. She sat in her room, looking at Baxter's photograph, but couldn't believe that the one she had seen in the forest was already dead. In her memory, the image of his large, kind eyes and his tail wagging as he walked beside her remained. He wasn't a ghost. He was real. He was there, and he had helped her. When the girl closed her eyes, she couldn't fall asleep right away. Thoughts of Baxter continued to haunt her until sleep finally overtook her. But in her dream, she saw him again. He was there, in the dark forest, as before. A magical light fell on his fur, and he joyfully wagged his tail, running around her as always. He wasn't sad. He was happy, the same cheerful and loyal soul she remembered. His eyes sparkled, and when he looked at her, she understood this wasn't just a dream. It was real. Baxter was with her. "Thank you," the girl whispered in her dream, reaching out to him. He approached, sniffed her hand, and licked her fingers, just like that time they played in the garden. His eyes said it all. It was a farewell, but a farewell filled with love and understanding. Waking up, the girl felt a warm wave in her heart. The next morning, as she went outside, Her eyes caught a small shiny object on the porch. She bent down and, seeing the gold medallion, almost gasped in surprise. The medallion was old and slightly scratched, but its shape was familiar. It was the same medallion Baxter always wore. Engraved on it was his name, Baxter. The girl picked it up and pressed it to her chest, feeling the world around her suddenly become clearer, and the pain of loss a little lighter. She couldn't explain how it had ended up there, but something inside her told her Baxter had been with her. He hadn't left her alone at the very moment she needed him most. He hadn't gone, and even death couldn't take him away completely. He remained by her side, in her heart and memories. The girl held the medallion like the most precious thing in the world. And, smiling through tears, she whispered, "Thank you, Baxter." It wasn't a goodbye but a promise that love never dies. Even when we lose those we love, they always remain with us, in our hearts.